Impact of influence, the Murdaugh family murders. This is the unfolding story of a powerful South Carolina family, the mysterious deaths they are linked to, and our quest to bring you the truth. Hello, friend. Matt Harris, Seton Tucker, producer Dwayne, all together, and we're going to be talking about in this episode the Cory Fleming sentencing and more on the Eddie Murdaugh quest for a new trial due to possible jury tampering. We'll talk about that. We've got stuff on Russell Laffitte to get to. We got Eddie Murdaugh pleading guilty on federal charges of financial crimes. All that is coming up. But first, impact of influence on Facebook. Go comment and reach out to us. Love your comments. Good, bad, indifferent. We will take them. And we're going to begin with the latest Murdaugh doc, season 2 of the Netflix documentary. And there's 3 episodes in this season. It's called Murdaugh Murders, A Southern Scandal. Okay, so we both watched it, of course. And let's just discuss some of the things we saw in this, some of the questions we have, some of the interesting things.
Let's start off with this obituary of Libby Murdaugh. She was the wife of Randolph Murdaugh and the grandmother of Paul Murdaugh. Morgan, Paul's former girlfriend, tells a story that she was told by Maggie Murdaugh, and she says that this obituary was placed because Libby asked for a divorce.
So Libby asked Randolph for divorce.
And then Randolph places an obituary.
Oh, like saying,
a warning sign.
A warning.
I mean, that was the implication, that it was a warning sign. And Morgan felt like Maggie was giving her a warning that this was the kind of family that you're marrying into.
Because remember, we knew about this obituary.
But we heard the opposite.
Yes, we did.
We heard that Libby was mad at Randolph.
Yep.
For one reason or another, and she placed it.
That's what we were told.
Yeah.
Multiple times by multiple people.
But now I've heard that both sides, and now it's folklore at this point, but I thought that was kind of interesting.
There's a fake obit anyway, which is weird.
It was fake. It was not true. She was alive.
What else do you want to highlight?
Well, Blanca was a star. Blanca was the housekeeper for the Murdaugh family, and we heard a lot from her. A few things that she said stuck out to me. One, she said that, she had prepared dinner for the family the night of the murders. And she said that usually after dinner, Maggie would reach out to her and say, "Oh, we ate dinner. Thank you. It was good," that sort of thing. And she never heard from Maggie that night. I thought that was interesting. Also, at the end of the documentary was asked if she thought anybody else was involved in the murders or the cleanup or the murders. And she was very uncomfortable and she did not want to answer that question.
That was a theme in the third episode. I guess it's basically how the episode ended, where they talked to Anthony Cook, who doesn't believe that Eddie did it, at least alone. Eddie Smith, I don't think he bought into it. Really, said that he had heard the theory that he had done it, and Eddie's like, I did. Of course, I didn't do it.
Morgan says she thought it was premeditated.
As in,
Eddie did it, and she thought it was premeditated.
Yeah. Well, if Eddie did it, that's the thing that's always stuck out to me is because of the missing guns, right? Prosecution said that it was these missing guns. That would mean premeditated, that Eddie would have taken them months ago and kept them around in case he needed to knock people off. And that's always been a weird thing to me.
Yeah. We also hear from Becky Hill.
Yes.
The court reporter. And she says that she thinks that he pulled the trigger, but he had help.
You know what? Speaking of Becky Hill on that, I thought it was interesting her talking about Paul. I think, was it Shemp Creek where they were when he was caught with booze on the boat and he was driving the boat?
And but if you look back at that, there were he received a ticket, but I think it was from improper equipment.
Yep. But they all said it was booze on the boat in this documentary.
And he may have had booze on the boat as well.
And they called Eddie for help. He said he would take care of it. Remember, that's what they said. Becky was talking about how that put more pressure on Eddie and caused him to have these real issues because of Paul doing, like kind of, I don't know, flaunting is the right word.
I don't know, but it just seemed like a minor ticket, so I'm not so sure.
And that's what I'm not sure. And that's when I also thought it was weird that Becky, Becky's super, super nice to us, but I thought it was strange that she was giving this theory as to why Alec might have extra pressure on him. I thought that was odd that she spoke out about it. What else did you see on there that we want to talk about?
We do have to talk about the lady who attended the auction of the contents of Moselle. We talked about this in one episode. They had all these lamps, turtle lamps, and all these things. This lady bought a vacuum cleaner, and she also bought the camera where there were images on the camera.
Mm-hmm.
The vacuum cleaner, she opens up, and she hadn't opened the contents of the bag, but she says it was full. It was really super
What's
bizarre.
weird about it? I thought they were going to lead into her opening it. She never opens it.
She doesn't open it. Maybe she needs to get a professional to want to the contents. But they show the photos that were on this camera, which I don't know. I felt that was slightly untasteful because I'm sure she sold these photos or licensed these photos to the Netflix people. And I don't know if you received a camera of someone who had died in their personal family photos, I would think you would want to return that camera to the family.
I had thought I had heard that she did, but they were showing the photos. But remember, I believed that I had heard somewhere along the line she had contacted the family to give it back, but I guess not.
I don't think so.
Apparently not. If that picture, it was still. I mean, and they were nothing like risque or anything. They were just pictures of a very happy family. At least they were at that time that those pictures were taken.
And her title in the documentary was Murdaugh Enthusiast.
Yeah, I did catch that. Also, they talked to Cousin Eddie, which is the first time you really see a long interview with him.
Episode 3 with Cousin Eddie was kind of blowing my mind. First, I want to point out, did you notice that they were interviewing him in a pharmacy?
I did not notice that.
It was so bizarre.
Are you serious?
It was kind of blurred out in the background, but I was like, oh my gosh, they're interviewing him in a pharmacy.
And also, I didn't buy for a minute when Cousin Eddie at some point goes, I said, if it's money laundering, I'm not doing it. Like, really? You knew it was a ton of money and you really, really significant checks. What was the total? It was a couple million.
And he says he said he was trying to get out of it. I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, he said he was trying to get out of it, but he cashed it. There was a check just a few days before the murders.
Yeah.
And so when was he going to get out of it? And also, really, that was when you didn't think something fishy was going on, that you were doing all these things. You're not a fool, Eddie. And then you're like, is it money laundering? And Alex said no. So I'm like, okay, I'll keep doing it.
And then one time he was delivering something to a law office in Beaufort, and he heard the bottle of pills rattling around. I mean, there were a lot of implications about some drug connections.
Oh, you think during the trial, the amount of pills that Alex said he took were just astonishing, and all the amount of money that Eddie was cashing for him, for Alec, it was insane.
Well, we need to talk about what Eddie says about the day of the Labor Day shooting fiasco. He says that he gets called by Alec Murdaugh and, meet me here. He goes and he says, Alec is like hiding behind a window shade and with the window pulled up kind of like a box. He's kind of looking out the window and he says, why are you looking out? And he says, I'm being watched by SLED. And he said, because of what happened or something along these lines. And then Eddie asks him what happens. He says, things just got all effed up.
Yeah. It seemed to me apparent that Eddie's not telling everything.
And he says that...
Eddie seems like an okay guy, I guess.
Why Alec is asking Eddie to shoot him, he says it's because they're going to be able to prove that I was responsible for Maggie and Paul.
Yeah, he feels it was all set up.
Yeah.
Like, and that made me think about something in the trial that I was surprised that the defense never brought up again. When the kennel guy was testifying, do you remember this? He said that Alec had called him to put down one of the dogs because Alec couldn't bring himself to do it. And if I'm the defense, I'm pointing out this guy couldn't shoot a dog that was sick and dying. How do you expect him to shoot his wife and child? I mean, it doesn't, there's no logic to that if you're a murderer, but you know what I mean? It's something, because it came up. Like, why would it?
I don't remember that part, but that is really interesting.
When the defense was talking to him, like, do you remember the time? And they made a specific point of bringing up this fact that Alec couldn't shoot one of the dogs. And yet they never highlighted it again. I thought they were going to use that. What else did you see of note in the Netflix special?
Just it did seem like people were aware. Becky Hill felt like Buster and Paul knew about this drug addiction. They talk about drugs being
Mm-hmm.
hidden around the house, bags of drugs under the bed, and
Mm-hmm.
you hear Blanca talk about that this drugs being everywhere as well.
You know
And
what I don't like when I hear it from anybody, and Kinsey seems like a good guy as far as I can tell, and he's interesting. But he was talking about they're like a Maggie or Paul must have been shot first because if Maggie was shot first, Paul would have seen it and Paul would have fought. Well,
yeah,
what makes us think that? There's no reason to think that. Is he an MMA guy or is he?
well, he is an expert. He has been trained in this sort of thing.
No, but not like whether you'd fight or not, because no one knows how a person is going to react to a stressful situation. There's fight, flight, and freeze. What makes us think that Paul is going to start fighting a guy who has a gun? So to use that as a theory as to why Paul had to be shot first doesn't hold up to me.
I don't know. I kind of disagree with you because I think that Kinsey is an expert who's done this for a very long time. So, in his expert opinion, he thinks that is what most likely happened.
Well, no, I can see why he uses science to back up what happened, but that's not science to say I think Paul would have fought because we never know what people like. I don't like it when they say, oh, did you hear the way they acted on that 911 call? People wouldn't normally do that. Do you hear the way they acted after that? Like all that stuff. We've watched enough,
It's
40
just
hours and Datelines to know that you never know how people are going to react to anything.
it's just supposition.
Yeah, and I don't think he should be doing. He should stick to science. I just don't like it when anybody does it.
There are so many unanswered questions. I think you have to make an educated guess.
First of all, I don't think. I mean, it's just enough to say he had to have been shot first because he was in the shed. If Maggie was shot first, he would have come out of the shed, right? That would have been enough.
I want to round back up to Eddie Smith just for one last time. Is they did ask him if he helped kill Maggie and Paul, and he answers no. But one thing that they did not ask him was if he helped in any sort of cleanup.
True. I think it's very possible Eddie would have rolled if he had anything to do with anything.
Good point.
Again, we're speculating just like Kinsey was, and I called him out on it. So what do I know? Crazy person. All right. Let's go to some of the recent things that have happened involving Ehrlich and Cory Fleming and Russell Laffitte. But let's start with some of the things that are shaken out with the defense team and saying that the clerk of court, Becky Hill, somehow involved in jury tampering. Let's talk about the latest in that.
Well, we discussed this in a previous episode that Alec Murdaugh's defense team requested an evidentiary hearing. This request was based on allegations of jury tampering by clerk of court Becky Hill. The defense is asking for a delay in appeal, and they want this evidentiary hearing to determine if these allegations are true.
Okay, let's refresh you a little bit. The defense claims that Becky Hill, Ms. Hill, had improper private communications with jurors. Allegations include she told jurors not to believe Murdaugh testimony or any evidence presented by the defense and pressured the jury to reach a quick verdict. And the state has filed a short response. In the response, it notes that SLED's investigation has revealed some, quote, factual disputes, which is an interesting term. Why not just say they've turned up some things that were not true?
Right, but they didn't elaborate on those.
No.
But Matt, you spoke with Attorney Joe McCullough, who represents several of the jurors, and what did he tell you?
He says as of last night, his clients have not been interviewed by any agency, any state agency, any investigative agency, and that strikes me as super odd.
Me too. And one of his clients is the juror who submitted an affidavit, the egg juror, who seems to be the one in the news a lot. And I would think that she would be the first person that SLED would want to interview.
Because we have heard that there is an investigation going on, but maybe there isn't. Maybe they're not even doing an investigation until it's kind of forced upon them.
Well, in the state's response, they say SLED is investigating.
That's true. That's right. They did, because they said the factual disputes. Because we had heard from Will Folks and others that SLED has been down there talking to people involved with this.
And we hear Eric Bland also represents 4 of the jurors. And I believe he's indicated that they have, spoken to law enforcement.
So why is Joe's people not? That is interesting.
I don't know. And also, why do all these jurors need representation? I'm actually really confused about that.
Well, Joe explained it in one of his court TV appearances, which was his explanation was he's like, whenever you have law enforcement or someone along those lines talk to you, it's good to have representation. It's good to have someone there because you don't know what you might be intimidated into saying or say that might not be accurate. It's just good to have. That was his take on it.
I mean, I think that's what any lawyer would tell you.
Right.
It's always good to have a lawyer. But I mean, it's just being a juror. You're not doing anything wrong. I just don't totally get it.
Yeah, but you don't have to do anything wrong to make sure that you're covered.
Well, that's true.
Because what if you say something that potentially incriminates you, but you really didn't mean it? You get tripped up. We get false confessions all the time, right?
Okay.
So that's basically why. And originally, the way I understood it, and I have not talked to Joe directly about this particularly. Remember when the juror was dismissed? She got Joe to represent her. And that was it. The take I had at the time was it was because she was getting inundated with media requests, and this way she could say, "Talk to my lawyer."
Yeah, because
it could be like an agent or a presser or something.
I actually got an email amongst a press email saying, "Hey, don't try to reach my client, reach me." So I took it the same way.
And that could be also why you need an attorney, so you can always say, "I'm not doing interviews. Everything goes through whoever's representing them."
Well, in the state's response, it says that there may well be a suspension of the appeal and a remand for an evidentiary hearing, and that it might be necessary to resolve some of the serious claims raised. And it also mentions this technical problem. According to the state, an affidavit by the accused should be included in this type of motion, and it was not. So I think they have 10 days to submit this.
And the accused
is Alec Murdaugh.
Yeah, I want to point that out, yes.
But we did receive a supplement to the defense motion, and in the supplement, they have attached an affidavit from a person named Timothy Stone.
But still not from Alec, right?
Not from Alec. We're still waiting on that. The defense is alleging that Clerk of Court Rebecca Hill invented a story about a Facebook post to a juror she believed might not vote guilty.
You wanted to have that juror removed because of this post.
Right. And the juror, I guess, is the egg lady, or egg juror. And according to this filing, Ms. Hill reported to Judge Newman that she saw a Facebook post on a Facebook group called Walterboro Word of Mouth that was written by the juror's ex-husband. This original post cannot be found on the group, and the egg lady's ex said he never made any such post. In the supplemental motion, we have an affidavit filed by Timothy Stone of Georgia. And now he has a similar name to the egg juror's ex-husband. And in this affidavit, he says he was never a member of this Walterboro Word of Mouth Facebook group and that he has never been married to the egg juror. He said that he did have an apology post written on his first personal Facebook page, which had nothing to do with the Murdaugh case. I guess this post was something to do with he was intoxicated and he said something bad about his wife's family member, and he removed the post the next day saying that he was intoxicated and mean to make this post.
Right, and apologized for it. And so the implication is there that this Timothy Stone posts something, somehow it gets to Becky Hill, she takes it to Judge Newman, but it's not any relation to Egg Lady.
Or Murdaugh case.
Or Murdaugh case at all.
At all.
And so then it's part of the reason, is what the defense is saying, the juror gets kicked off.
Well, that's what they're saying, but at the trial, the egg juror said, "Am I being removed for something my ex-husband said?"
Right.
And Judge Newman says no.
Yep, I remember. Yep, very clearly remember that, because that had been the buzz all throughout all of us that were sitting out there. You'd get these rumors flying around, and one of them was about that.
There's also a question of how did they come upon this email from somebody who appears to be totally unrelated to the
Facebook
case.
Post, you mean?
Yeah, Facebook post. How did they come upon this Facebook post at all in the first place?
Someone had to have sent it to Becky Hill or somebody that knew Becky Hill, right? Because if it's not on anything to do with Murdaugh, it's just this random guy who has a similar name. How'd they find it?
Rebecca Hill says she had seen it on this Walterboro group and that maybe the post had been removed, and maybe in trying to find that post, maybe they searched for the name and found it. I don't know.
And also remember at the presser that Harpootlian and Griffin had, they talked about the actual real ex-husband of the egg lady juror and how they had gone through all of his posts and all of his email. They had gone through all his stuff and there was nothing.
Yeah, he agreed, and I believe there's an affidavit submitted with their motion that says, here's all of my information. I've never made any sort of post like that.
But again, the Facebook post might not have had anything to do with her getting booted. That's going to be up for debate, right?
Right. But now we have this leaked video, which was leaked to Fix News, and this video appears to be related to the egg juror. Let's refresh their memory.
I'm going to try to make this as clear as possible, but it's kind of a tangled web, right? She supposedly discussed the Murdaugh case. She was on the jury. She has some tenants. She takes in a refrigerator, I think, right? She worked at a pizza place. At least one or two of the people, maybe both of them, also worked at the pizza place that were the tenants. So she goes and takes the refrigerator, starts yapping about the Murdaugh trial. The pizza person goes to work and starts yapping about it. Somehow it goes gets to hold of back to the judge, or I think an email, right? Was it an email?
Right.
Yes.
So this coworker of the tenants of the egg juror.
Yeah, so we're like 3 removed, remember? So
right.
Juror talks to tenant talks to other coworker emails the judge.
And this is apparently the reason this communication with the judge is why the egg juror was dismissed.
Now, after the trial, Dick Harpootlian went to the coworker who sent the email and find out what's the deal. Why did you send this email? Just question her and figure out what's going on. And Fitz News got this leak thing, and this is a short clip from that. And by the way, this was the coworker secretly videoing Harpootlian talking to her.
I believe so.
Okay.
Made an email to the judge.
Did
you call somebody? You talked to somebody?
I talked to a friend of mine, and I told her what was going on. And she listened to her because she's my sister-in-law. Actually, we've been best friends for 20 plus years. And she told me that the best thing to do is maybe look and see if you can get Judge Newman's email, and maybe email him.
Did you ever talk to the court to court, Becky?
No, I did not.
Did you talk to any sweat agents? Anybody interview you?
No, nobody's talked to me other
So
than
that email was just a result. You sent it. Nobody told you to send it. That was your idea to send it.
Yes, nobody's told me to send it. Nobody. I didn't even know. She just brought it up, and she said maybe he'll get it, maybe he won't. And, I just felt like.
Where'd you get the email from?
Off Google. You can look it up. I can't remember how I found it, but I found it.
Okay, so my first takeaway is Dick Harpootlian is not buying that this person decided to contact the judge on their own accord.
Yes, that's why he's asking how, because you just don't know. How do you know Judge Newman's email, right?
Right. I mean, you wouldn't think.
I don't know. Can you just look it up? I don't know.
You hear this conversation amongst your coworker, and you immediately think, "I need to contact the judge." He seems to be questioning that.
And how much had the egg juror said that would alert somebody twice removed to contact the judge? Right? It sounds as Dick is saying, "Okay, did somebody approach you and ask you if you heard anything?" That's what he's kind of sounds like he's implying.
He's asking that. He asked this person if they ever had spoken to Becky Hill, and they say no. But I also found it really interesting that in this conversation, this person is asked if they were ever contacted by law enforcement or court officials.
Nope.
No. And they say, if you listen to the full clip on Fitz, they say, "Did you provide the name of the juror?" And they say no. So if this person was never contacted by any sort of court official or SLED, how did they know
It was her.
it was her?
And by the way, Philip Barber, the other Murdaugh attorney, is there. Yes, because you would think that you can't just some random email shows up that says a juror is saying things and just go, okay, right? You wouldn't just automatically accept it. I wouldn't think, but I don't know. But if you just get a random, because anybody could just say anything. and send it to a judge and say, hey, so-and-so is talking. Wouldn't you want to check it out more?
I mean, I know earlier on in the hearing, there was a communication sent to Judge Newman and the jury was taken out, and it was about some sort of leak of confidential juror information, and they discussed it and everything was fine, and the juror came back in. So I guess Judge Newman was reading his emails. But it still it seems weird because that this juror's name was not mentioned. And how did the court know or Judge Newman know that it was the egg juror?
Okay, how about this possibility? Let's run this one by you. The person who sent it says, I work at the pizza place. And then he just puts 2 and 2 together. Who else works at a pizza place? Right? Maybe something like that.
Or
it's a small town too, remember.
It is a small town.
If you know somebody's name, you just go, hey, does anybody know her? Who does she work with?
And in the interview in its entirety, they kind of asked the juror about how they think that the judge knew. And they said, well, maybe they knew that this juror owned rental properties, or I don't know.
Yeah, could just basic clues that could track down which person it was. Fitz News is saying, one of the things they mentioned, which is a good point, that it does appear that maybe Egg Lady was saying things, which could help the prosecution.
Yeah, no, it corroborates that story.
It's just weird that you wouldn't check it out. Like, it feels like to me, if you don't check it out, then anybody could say anything and send an email to somebody.
Well,
make it up.
And if Dick Harpootlian shows up your doorstep, you might be a little intimidated. I mean, he's got his glasses on if you watch the YouTube video, and I'm wondering if this person knew that Dick Harpootlian was going to show up at their doorstep.
And that's why they were taping it, filming it.
I don't know.
Is someone to be there too, so they set it up or something? I don't know.
If the angle looks like it's being held down in kind of an upward angle,
like someone sat on a porch or something.
Yeah.
I don't know, and I don't know whose side that helps more, that whole interaction. To be honest with you.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Okay, what's up next, Seaton? Where do you want to go next? Cory Fleming?
Yes, let's talk about Cory Fleming's. There was a lot of confusion on social media about the amount of time Cory was sentenced to. A lot of people thought it was 20 years. And then Drew Tripp with ABC News 4, Charleston, did kind of a deep dive and concluded that Cory Fleming was sentenced to 10 years, but he could get off as early as 8.5 years. And I've separately confirmed that is accurate. Now, the first part of his sentence will be served in federal prison, and the remaining months will be in state prison. And because he was charged with money laundering, he is required to serve 85% of his time for his state sentence. And I think a lot of his state sentence was because of the Hakeem Pinckney charges, because if you recall, Hakeem Pinckney, the statute of limitations had run for the federal charges, so he was only charged in relation to the Satterfield case in the federal court.
So is it going to be, bottom line is 10-year sentence, 8.5?
That is, and what I think the biggest takeaway here is he is going to be spending a pretty significant amount of time in state prison after he serves his federal time. And because of that, he's probably going to want to maximize the amount of time he spends in federal prison so that he spends less time in state prison. So because of that, he's probably not going to want to participate in programs like RDAP that we spoke about in a previous episode, which could reduce his amount of federal time. Because he's probably going to want to maximize the amount of time he spends in federal prison.
He doesn't want to do anything to shorten that.
No.
I get it.
There's some questions. Did he get more time because of his relationship with Eddie and Murdaugh and because he's a lawyer?
Well, when you hear Judge Newman speak about it, it does appear that he's hammering him because of the fact he was a lawyer and because of his connection to Alec. That's what it seemed like he was really hammering him because of that.
Right, and I'm not really seeing a lot of other cases with similar amounts of money stolen. There's this Richard Breitbart case from Lexington. He stole over $2.4 million, and he received 5 years of federal time.
And what Cory did not take nearly that much.
No,
he didn't even take in the millions.
No, and I mean, just word on the street that this is more than what most attorneys.
Similar type offenses, right? Yeah. So Fleming at the sentencing said, "I have a profound and deep disappointment in myself. It is very difficult, and the constant feeling I will carry with me for the rest of my life.
And let's talk about what Newman said. He says that he had to suffer the consequences for his actions, for what he'd done to vulnerable people. And he says, this is unprecedented and unimaginable. This, I think, is the greatest crime for lawyers in the history of the state of South Carolina.
Woo, pretty heavy.
Yeah. I wonder if Cory is regretting maybe pleading for all this.
Well, I don't know. I think that Judge Newman is very outraged by, I think, the type of people that they ripped off too, right? So I don't know who the Breitbart guy, I don't know who he was ripping off, but Alec and Cory Fleming were taking advantage of very vulnerable people.
Absolutely. I mean, in particular, the Hakeem Pinckney case, taking advantage of a deaf man who became a quadriplegic seems particularly bad.
All right, Alec Murdaugh, he pled guilty, federal charges, and there were a bunch of them. Here's a few. 1 count of conspiracy to commit wire and bank fraud, a max of 30 years. Count of bank fraud, max 30 years. 5 counts of wire fraud, different amount of times for each one, but adds up to like 30 years. 1 count of conspiracy to commit wire fraud, there's 20 years. 14 counts of money laundering, 20 years. And this is contingent upon the defendant abiding by federal and state laws. And what else, Seaton?
The defendant agrees to be fully truthful and forthright with law enforcement and providing full, complete, and truthful information about all criminal activities which he has knowledge. He'll also be required to testify if necessary. And in this agreement, he has to submit to polygraph examinations if requested by the government.
And any violation will void the agreement. I didn't know. That seems weird to me that the polygraph thing is in there, but you checked with some attorneys?
I checked, and I guess that is a pretty standard thing to put in. I know it made the rounds on social media. I think Eric Bland said that maybe a polygraph machine might blow up, and that could be true.
I think it's not admissible in court, polygraph, but yet it's a court-ordered polygraph. That seems counterintuitive to what the whole thing is. You can't even use it in court, but if the court's telling you have to do it.
Yeah, I don't
Weird.
know. I guess all of these things could make his plea agreement null and void.
Now, I wonder if, they says they have to tell him about complete and truthful information about all criminal activities about which he has knowledge. All. Does that mean not just the money one?
I believe, but I don't know.
So that's drugs, murder?
I don't know if this I think it's related to the financial crimes.
Just to the financial crimes.
I believe so, but don't quote me if I have that wrong.
It doesn't matter because if he's lies about the other stuff, he's going to be in jail the rest of his life. It sure as heck seems like, no matter what.
Well, I think he would prefer to spend that in federal prison.
True.
And the next step will be a pre-sentencing report, which will be in approximately 45 to 60 days. And then after that, he will be sentenced about 90 days after that. I mean, he's in state prison. So I guess his goal is probably to get to, federal prison.
Just don't see how that's going to, because I would think the double murder trumps everything else, you would think.
You would think, but I mean, he is appealing that.
He's appealing that, absolutely right. And then Murdaugh, old Alec, has the financial crime hearing. Now, that is for the state, right? Set for November in Beaufort in front of Judge Newman, who he's going to hammer him, of course.
Right. And I do think there's legitimate questions about whether Judge Newman can be impartial about Alec and these financial crimes. I mean, he basically just said Cory Fleming was the worst offender for these legal crimes and financial crimes in the history of the state.
So if he thinks he's the worst, because Alec's way worse.
Right. And Judge Newman also told the jury after the murder trial that he thinks they got it right.
And so now he's going to hear Alec Murdaugh's hearing. Alec pled guilty to the financial crimes in federal, but he hasn't pled in the state financial crimes, right?
Yes. And regardless of what you think about Alec Murdaugh, I mean, clearly he seems to be a pretty despicable person, but citizens are entitled to have a judge who has not predetermined the outcome of the hearing. I mean, they're supposed to be neutral.
And he's certainly not neutral. And I don't know if you could find a judge who is neutral. I mean, everybody's read about it. Everybody knows everything, right?
Yeah.
But Judge Newman is particularly harsh to Alec. I mean, I'm not saying he doesn't deserve to be harsh. I'm saying, from what I hear, you don't hear a lot of judges really as outspoken about things.
Oh, yeah. And he's gone on media. He's gone on Good Morning America and spoken about it.
Yes. All right. So you got that. We have a little Russell Laffitte to do before we wrap this one.
Yes. Russell Laffitte's defense team has requested for another extension for him to have to report to jail until September 29th, and this has been granted. In this appeal, the defense cited that they were awaiting the Fourth Circuit session for the request for him to stay out of jail while this appeal is pending. Emily Limehouse is a government prosecutor, and interestingly enough, she did not object to this. You know, it's been almost a year since Russell Laffitte was convicted, but I don't know, by this being granted by the court and also Emily Limehouse not objecting to him having this additional week, does this mean that maybe an appeal may be granted, or they're going to let him stay out on house arrest while this appeal is...
Maybe they just figure, like she said, it's up to the court, and you want to be on good standing with the court, so you just say, hey, court, handle it. We're going to get this guy anyway. Eventually, he's going to do his time, is probably what she's thinking, right?
It just makes me question whether maybe something is coming down the pipes.
Oh, so you're thinking maybe that they don't want to put him in jail and then have an appeal go through and then put him back out again.
Well, it's not even the appeal. He's requesting to stay out of jail while this appeal is forthcoming.
Right. So anyway, Russell Laffitte, by the way, the banker buddy of Alec in this thing. And Cory Fleming mentioned earlier is the attorney buddy.
And he has received his assignment from the Federal Bureau of Prisons. And instead of Jessup Correctional Institute, which Judge Gergel recommended, the Federal Bureau of Prisons has said he needs to go to Coleman, which is in Central Florida. So this is a little bit further travel for his family.
Speaking of travel, we couldn't travel to CrimeCon because both of our kids are freshmen at USC, South Carolina.
Go Gamecocks.
And it is Parents' Weekend. So, kids, jeez.
I really want to be at CrimeCon,
Me
though.
too.
I mean, of course, I'd rather be at Parents' Weekend
wouldn't.
with my kid. But
I wouldn't.
but CrimeCon is going to be so good because you have Creighton Waters is going to be there. His band's performing. Kenneth Kinsey's going to be there. I think Dick Harpootlian, Jim Griffin, Sarah Azari.
Joe McCullough.
Oh, is he going to be there too?
Yep.
Oh, I want to be a fly on the wall.
I said, Joe, the people are going to love the silver fox. And he said, I'm going to put a tinfoil hat on top of it for all these people who think there's conspiracies going on.
Well, I wish that we could be there.
I know you all miss us.
And it's a great way to grow your podcast, so I'm
I know.
kind of disappointed for
Let's
us.
tell our kids to bleep off. I'm just kidding. Well, it's only a short little drive down to Orlando. And, the thing is, all those people owe us at least a drink or a dinner, too. So that's where we really messed up. But we'll have stories from Parents' Weekend because I'm staying at Seaton's place.
No, don't say that. People are going to start thinking we're having some sort of relationship.
No,
You can't say that.
with Seaton and her husband, Len. Her husband, Len, is a good friend of mine, too. People, get your
that
head out of the
sounds so
gutter.
bad. No, you have to redo that. You can't say that.
I think it's funny how we screamed it. No, that's funny. Don't you think, Dwayne?
What?
That's great. There's no relationship. Well, I mean, friends. And in fact, I think Seaton's telling me, would you tell me I have to sleep in a closet or something?
We call it the Situation Room. We own a condo across from the stadium with another couple, and we take the bedrooms, and there's this weird room right off of the kitchen that doesn't have any windows or ventilation.
That's where I am. Well, I kind of invited myself, so I'll be in the Situation Room. I'll probably be passed out, a late game and all that. But anyway, always appreciate that. And maybe we'll have some stories to tell after the weekend. Or maybe we'll have to, mutual bribery. We'll have to have your husband on to tell the real stories of Seaton Tucker.
Yeah, some.
All right. Check out The Impact of Influence on the Facebook page thingy. And we will talk soon, friend.